Hello and welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. Today's guest is Eric Hecker. Eric was recommended to me by Penny Bradley, so I contacted him and he was nice enough to come on. Now, Eric's case is very special in the fact that he actually has evidence backing up his experiences, his service, with pictures, documents, pay stubs, all of it. I kind of tend to look at him. I hope he doesn't get offended me saying this. Kind of as the Bob Lazar of the North Pole, but with hard evidence, right? Without
South Pole.
Oh yeah, it's the South Pole. Sorry.
I live north, but it was you're referencing the south side. I just happen
Antarctica.
to be north now.
Yeah. But yeah, he has hard evidence that he shares on his YouTube channel where he displays some of his pictures and interviews others on Deciphering My Experience. Link will be in the description. Welcome, Eric. Thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
I am fantastic, Ryder. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think the email exchanges have been great, and I found your channel very interesting as well. You sent me over a link so I can get familiar with what you're doing, and I really like what you're doing. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot. We're going to get into a really great conversation here. But before we get into that, maybe give us just a little brief background on your experience, not really to kind of rehash what you've kind of, talked about on other interviews, but just to give people an idea about you and your experiences.
I guess, let me think of, I'll look at it backwards this way. Currently, I reside up in Alaska. I've been working remotely up here. Oil fields, gold mines, research facilities, all kind of interesting things out in the middle of nowhere. I got that gig after doing stuff in the South Pole Station, 2010 to 2011. That was a very interesting time. Prior to that, I was working as a plumber in some of the most extremely affluent communities that you can't even begin to imagine, and the types of homes. Prior to that, as a youth, I was in Long Island, New York, and I was involved in a very peculiar, what I now know to be a CIA-run, super duper top secret program where they were working with children in a remote viewing capacity, up to and including what I am now learning to be drugs applied into my eyeballs, which some folks are trying to intimate to me that was LSD, actually. So very peculiar programs, very peculiar places I've been, and a lot of other things.
So how did, so you came out with your experiences a little over a year ago now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you first came out with your experiences on Ileana's channel, Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I remember listening to that first interview when it came out. I was actually working a graveyard shift at the time and listening to it. But I distinctly remember Ileana asking you if you felt like you had ever been abducted or seen any UFOs or had any weird occurrences. Because, you worked in Antarctica, and, with the stories we hear about Antarctica, it's reasonable to ask that question. And I remember you said, no, you hadn't, besides what you kind of described as an asteroid. But she was kind of hinting at the possibility that maybe you did, and kind of recommended that you get a regression. So I guess my question is, what has changed between that interview and not really knowing anything and now? Has anything changed? Did you get that regression? Did you receive any memories? What's kind of going on there?
Absolutely. I have been doing a lot of work on myself in many facets since then. And I absolutely reconsider my recollection of that story as I told to Ileana on that show. It was prior to her asking me on the show, in my memory banks, I retained that as it must have been an asteroid, because I had never seen anything like it before. It's almost impossible for me to describe. I'm trying to find artists to do artist renditions for me to present some depiction of what I saw. Scale, size, and speed matters a lot for what I saw, because regardless of what it was, right? So right now it was unidentified. Whatever it was, I know it is an unidentified thing. But with that being said, what makes it special was the trajectory, the path that it took was straight as an arrow. It never deviated, and it went from horizon to horizon. So now my brain has just, I guess, a greater understanding of what I was looking at, and I can't accept that it was simply an asteroid. So now I think more of the situation, and I'm trying to figure it out.
So how exactly did you get, because you were working on military bases in Antarctica, right?
Well, they don't call it a military base anymore. They're civilian contracting companies that are military industrial complex contractors. Like when I was there, I was contracted by Raytheon. So is Raytheon a military facility? No, they're not a military facility. They just sell all the things that military facilities need and use and staff them and stuff like that. So it's a technicality, I guess, but I'm just going to state that I'm not calling it a military base. No one's officially calling it a military base, but you can suggest whatever you want.
Perfect. So how was it that you kind of got involved? How was the job basically offered to you to be able to go to Antarctica?
I found the job online. It was shortly after the real estate bust of 2008. I had previously had a plumbing company in New York, and it was tanking right there with the economy. So I was just trying to figure out what to do, and I was looking abroad to find where my skill set could be applied. And I was contacted by Raytheon, and they contracted me to go to the South Pole. I was not really interested in going there, to be honest, but at the time it was the only person on the, it's so funny in hindsight, because I used to say this back then. I'd be like, listen, I have to go do this because it's the only person on the planet that'll cut me a check right now.
Yeah.
So I went because it was what it was. I needed to pay bills, and almost everybody that I went there to meet was there for the adventure. Like they all looked into the adventure and how to figure out how to get there for the adventure of it. I was there because I had bills to pay.
So a lot of people in the kind of truther community and conspiracy kind of community want to make Antarctica out to be this this mystical type of land where secret operations and underground military bases and reptilians kind of live there.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your kind of experience there? What were the people like? Because I assume that there were other people there, right?
It is there. There was a lot of people coming and going in the summer season. I believe our camp population was up very close to 280, which was high for a summer season. And that's people actually residing. It doesn't really qualify people coming and going through the facility to outer camps or just day traffic flying in and out and activities like that. In addition, it's an international facility. So there's a lot of people that don't speak English. They're from foreign lands. And additionally, this is something that was brought up, I think, on Rex Bear on the Leak Project. I think he pointed out that, with all the cold weather gear, there's so many times that people are just covered head to toe. I never actually saw who was inside the gear. So he was, teasing like it could have been an alien. I guess I could have. I don't know. But yeah. I can't officially say that I saw anything that odd. But I will tell you that when you're talking about facilities with massive amounts of money invested in them, I don't care where you are, they're shady. If you're talking this billions and billions and billions of dollars put into a building, there's something else going on besides what they say it does. And that's anywhere on the planet. And I've worked in all types of those facilities. So yeah, everything's shady. What I divulged in Ileana's first interview a year ago, and this was it was kind of funny because I guess I knew when I was saying it at the time, no one's going to pay attention to them saying it anyway. No one's going to see this video. But it's there a year ago when I first planted this seed to see what folks think. And the ELF is what I brought up. The extra low frequency system is on. And a lot of people don't know that. And it may or may not be a big deal. I guess it depends on what you think the severity of that system operating is.
Yeah, I wanted to chat a little bit about the ELF device you were speaking about with Ileana and Penny Bradley on your most recent interview, because I think that's very important information. I've long been under the impression that the beings and the people that gave us our current technology that we're using, our phones, our computers, and things like that, the internet, the Wi-Fi, really didn't have humans' best interest, right? Because the frequencies that are emitted from our technology could do all kinds of things to our biometrics. It could rewire our neural networks. It could even open up portals to different kinds of realities like CERN. People are saying that CERN does that, and other realms, for basically anything to come through. Could really even be able to implant thoughts into our head, make us do things. It would be kind of like MK Ultra mind control, but without the trauma,
Absolutely.
So, and some are more susceptible, to it than others. So what was the ELF device used for in Antarctica? Like what were they saying that it was used for?
They were saying it was off. I'm saying to everyone, that's not true. That's basically the long and short of it. I mean, people have to take from that what they will. No one told me what it was doing or anything. They were telling me it was off. I'm saying it wasn't. I know it to be on. I had full run of that facility. I had every circuit breaker and blueprint available to me. I'm just simply stating I went to the South Pole Station, and I can confirm that from 2010 to 2011, the ELF system was on. Now everybody needs to look into what an ELF can do and ask themselves, if it can do that, would they be using it for that?
Right. What is the main purpose for them to use it? Like, what is the thing that they say that it's being used for? Is
who's the they in this question?
The people that built it, the reason why it's there, and in Antarctica.
I'm not certain why they initially put it there. I would have to gather that it probably had something to do with submarine communications, would be my best guesstimate. Some sort of long range communications would be what they stated it was originally built for.
That makes sense. So some kind of like tracking, a tracking device then.
Now there's a trillion other things they could be potentially doing with it, but then that's a matter of them. Like, this is just step one. It's on. Now what do people do? There's a lot of things that an ELF system can be used as a component thereof to other systems. But I can't say that I know that's what's going on. I can only tell people what I do know. It's not off.
Yeah, and not only that couldn't be the only one that they have too. There would have to be multiple.
Redundancy is a very popular thing in military programs, big time. They love redundancy. So that stands par for the course. If they got one, they got four. I can totally follow that logic.
And while we're kind of on the topic of technology here, that kind of makes me think too. I'm kind of sure you've noticed, why is nothing really built to last anymore? Like the roads, houses, buildings, cars, electronics, appliances, all of it seems to break down in a very short period of time. Now, obviously, a part of this is, for monetary gain on behalf of the corporations, and keeping the people poor with things that they're constantly need to be replacing and fixing. But I think there's more to this, because we know not just everything happens for one reason, right? There's many reasons. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, most things happen because of the intentions of others in most people's lives. They don't actually realize how much intention and collusion is going on outside of their presence to impact their lives. I think, we're all kind of beating around the bush on it on our shows and trying to present to people that things aren't exactly what we've been presented. And why would they ever be? When you get presented something, it's like television. You get presented a show. It has no semblance of reality. When you get presented the history of the world, it probably has very little to do with the history of the world. When you get presented the science of the cosmos, it probably has very little to do with the science of the cosmos. When you get presented, the religious aspects of a certain society in an area, like things get changed. It's the telephone game through time, especially when somebody else realizes that the game is going on and they start to modify things and tweak things and insert words as the telephone game is going on. So
Yeah, and then it also, like, with digitizing everything too, like they want everything to be like on a computer. They want everything, digitized to where you can just pull it up, and that creates a way for them to modify it, right? Because if you don't have a physical copy
yep.
of something, then there is no hard proof of it even existing, and they can go in there and erase
Absolutely.
it. They can get rid of it. They can change it.
We don't own
however.
things anymore. We borrow them. And I started noticing the world changing. There's a couple of major points in my growing up that I saw as pivotal points in society where I said, we shouldn't turn this corner. We should not do this. It should not be allowed to happen this way. One, I was working in Kmart in high school, and I had found out that in the book section that Kmart was such a powerhouse of the industry that if they didn't like the content of your book, they could make the author change it for a Kmart content-friendly version. And I went, wow, this can't be good, that the commercial establishments are now telling the artists what to do and what to create. And I immediately said, this is not good. And look where we are since that thought happened. We're on an internet with artists who are just constantly edited and told, you can't say this, that's too controversial. You can't make people think about that. How dare you spread that fraudulent information out there? It's not fraudulent information, it's my thoughts. I just happen to disagree with everyone. I didn't realize that would get me the scarlet letter nowadays.
They kind of want to censor everyone and, shadow ban people that they disagree with.
Yep.
That's the real key there, and is what their plans are, to get everybody on a very narrow view of reality, and only the accepted kind of information can get out there and spread.
The second thing that I remember happening was when leasing vehicles got shoved down everybody's throat as if it was the greatest thing. And I remember friends of mine showing up, and they would have, like, this was back when those huge Ford Expeditions came out, and they were like advertised them as $50,000. It was like the first truck ever to be $50,000. It was an absurd number at the time. And I remember one of my friends getting one and leasing it and being so proud. And he was like, man, I never could have afforded this if it wasn't for the lease. And I'm like, exactly. That's the whole, you can't afford that truck. You still can't afford that truck. You're never going to afford that truck. You're simply borrowing it. And he was like, you don't understand. You don't get it. Now I can have things that I couldn't afford. And I'm like, 10-4, roger that. You're doing way better now. Go lease the rest of your life. My bad.
Yeah, and that's like a early kind of programming into the reality that they want to get us into,
Absolutely.
They want to get us into that Agenda 21, Agenda, 2030 type of reality where we absolutely don't own anything, right?
Correct.
And we're borrowing everything, and we're renting everything, and we're told what to do, we're told where to go, we're told when to eat.
But they present it as, well, now you can eat anything you've ever wanted. Now you can have any car you've ever wanted. Like all the things that you never could have had, you can touch them now and you can use them. But what they don't tell you is you'll never, ever own it.
Yeah, that's and they present it also in the way that it's the best for us, right? In exactly the way that you kind of said it. They make it look pretty, and they dress it up in a nice little, neat box with a, beautiful bow on it, and they put that presentation out there, but yet no one read the fine print.
I wonder how many happy, smiley children they'll have in the commercial, dancing around in the fields when they're presenting it,
People, looking all, sexy and beautiful and everything, because, sex sells. But you mentioned, our history, and, and it's been controlled, as from the very, very start, because if you control the past, you control the future. Now we know of groups like the Committee of 300, the Bilderberg Group, Rockefeller Foundation, Trilateral Commission, MJ12, better known as Majestic 12. But I think the majority of these groups are front groups, right, or used as patsy groups, because if we know about them, then they're more than likely don't hold any real power. Now, that's not to say they aren't being used, because I think they are. I just think there's groups behind them, and then there's groups behind those groups.
Yes.
That we will never know about, and the select few at the top that have all of the money, all of the power, control all the resources, and in turn have complete and utter control of the world through these groups and corporations. I know you're probably familiar with the concept that Weishaupt created called the rings within rings of power. The genius part about the rings within rings concept is that each individual subgroup think that they run the show, when they're really just a cog in the wheel of a much bigger operation.
Yes, absolutely. Compartmentalization is where it's at. That's the power. And it's very easy to make a compartment think that it's very special. And I don't want to say that, folks like Committee of 300 members and Bilderbergs, I don't want to say that they're not powerful. They're certainly powerful in their own right, but they are factions. That is correct. There are factions and factions and factions. And that's why, I like clarity when people say like they, because there's so many different theys. There's so many groups in this. And like, you're discussing contemporary stuff. And I would say that those factions are the ones that we know about. Yes, there's people behind them, because they're the ones that are from greater antiquity, that have been in power longer than those groups came into existence. There's always a bigger kid on the block. It's just the way that it is. And we're in very trying times, I think, contemporarily, because there's just there's a lot of warring between the factions, and that's still we're just talking globally. I also think intergalactically. So that just adds more factions. God only knows how long people have been fighting on the surface of this planet about this planet, but God only knows how long that fight was going on somewhere else before it even got here.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I had a thought a couple of years ago that what if a lot of our history and a lot of these, cuneiform tablets and a lot of the things that's, been kind of discovered, and we've kind of, figured out our history more, what makes it that it's actually from Earth? Right? What makes it that it even had to happen on Earth? Could it not have happened on another planet, and they brought the tablets here from another planet? Like there's so many different possibilities.
That's a good point. They could have been transported from somewhere else and brought to here. That's a good, I've never heard anybody mention that, but that could be. All possibility exists always. And yeah, maybe we're a repository of histories from other places.
I mean, that would be an explanation for why everything seems so confusing, right? And why, certain civilizations have, certain technologies and did things a certain way, because I would guess that not all of them would have happened here. They could have been from, outside of the planet.
Mm-hmm. I can follow
that. So on a different kind of topic here, we know our science and medical practices are, running on a false paradigm. and that we have way more advanced technology out there, like, you know, med beds, regen tanks, immersion pods, holographic medical pods that Ileana has been talking about, you know, basically free energy devices.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with any of these devices? And
I'm familiar with the idea of them. And as you're saying this, it's making me laugh because in my head, like I I know where the directions go. Like, you know, have you seen this? Have you experienced these type things? And you know, I don't mean to cut you short. Is that the direction you were going? Like,
well,
have I
just
seen anything like that? Or
yeah, sort of like if you'd experienced anything like that, or if you know about any of those devices.
I'm going to tell you a story about a time I hurt myself at the South Pole Station, and we'll just take with it what it is. I was in the power plant, the primary power plant, not the emergency power plant. And on this particular day, I was going to move, I believe it was like, I think it was like an 80-gallon drum of fuel or something like that. And I had my ergos wrong. I went to go like jerk this thing back. And the environment's very taxing on your body, being at elevation, lack of oxygen. You can get hurt very easily. So what wound up happening was I tore my right bicep when I was going to try to wheel that drum back onto the cart and move it. Destroyed my arm, really hurt really badly. And the power plant's extremely loud. We had safety gear on, and my partner that I was in there with work, and I was trying to let him know that I was hurt, and he's laughing and teasing me like as if I'm faking, you know. I'm trying to let him know. No, like, no, dude, I'm like, I'm really hurt. I'm not kidding. I'm not just messing around. Like, we need to go. I got to go. I'm hurt. And finally, he's like, oh, okay, okay. So I go to the medical clinic at the South Pole Station. These are the facts. Our doctor used to be in the CIA. Our surgeon has a great history and a wonderful story himself. But that's the guy that I went to the medical clinic to go show my arm now to. Really nice guy. And I became under his care. And he diagnosed me, told me everything that was the matter, said that I tore my bicep, can't move it, blah, blah, all this stuff, right? Long story short, he also told me that I'm not going to heal well because in this environment, it takes everything longer to heal. And I told him, I said, I don't know. I said, I heal very rapidly normally. And he was kind of like laughing at me. Long story short, after I guess maybe just a few weeks of visits here and there, I was back to tip-top condition, and somehow my torn bicep was not torn, and I was functioning quite well, quite rapidly under the care there. Now, there were beds and medical gear that was used on me. But all I could say is I wasn't told anything special. But now in hindsight, I don't know that they would have to. Maybe they don't tell you. I don't know. But I had ripped my right bicep savagely, and they had told me it was going to take forever to heal, if not heal completely. And I can tell you right now, my arm's fine.
Yeah, because a lot of people with ripped biceps, like it's like ripped indefinitely. You know, some people like it's just tore up for you know, the rest of their life. I actually knew this gentleman when I was younger that had torn his bicep, and he looked like Popeye when he would bring his arm up because of the
I'd seen that
tore.
before too, and I had it for a while. It was screwy for a while, but my arm's fine now. And yeah, and he had brought on the diagnosis, like you had mentioned, the same way for your friend, and he had given me all the doom and gloom and promised me nothing. But lo and behold, I mean, within weeks, I was fine.
That's really strange. I guess, do you think that we'll ever kind of see the release of these technologies, you know, in our lifetime? Because with the current system we have now, it almost seems, you know, impossible because death is such a huge capital in the current system.
I'm
What use would we have for people that live forever or even hundreds of years, right?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that the information comes out, and I would like to just simply say that I support the team that's trying to bring that information out. Whether it will ever happen, I don't know, but I see no reason to have it secreted away just for the elite if it were to exist.
I mean, I guess we can take a solid guess as to why the SSP and the super soldier class would have a use for regen tanks and med beds, because they've put so much time into these certain individuals, and they're important to them at the time, of course. So a
Mhm.
dead asset is no longer a useful asset.
Right.
So I think that this is, where they would have to kind of depopulate the planet, which I think is a big agenda and a main agenda of what's happening, right now. They would need to depopulate by a large percentage in order to really make these technologies more useful and, have more control, because they love control. And because in their eyes they can't just have billions of people running around living for hundreds of years, especially with the current state of affairs. It would kind of wreak havoc, and that's not what I think, of course, but I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective, right?
Yeah, I don't think people share as much as people would want them to when they have these really awesome toys. I've had a discussion before with folks about like anti-gravity. They're always like, well, if anti-gravity, why won't they give us anti-gravity? Because why would they give you anti-gravity? If someone else invested in it and has it, they're not going to just hand it over to you. And it's a commodity. Possession's 9/10 of the law, and not even allowing someone, into the show, then they're not privy. They don't even know. They're stuck, buying the cars that you're giving them as you're flying around in your anti-grav ship. If you give them
Yeah.
anti-grav ships, they don't buy cars anymore. And we're not anywhere near mass producing anti-grav ships, but we're not going to tell people that rich people can afford them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you take a good look at how our reality works, and the control system that's been, kind of set up, things kind of have to be completely dismantled before something new can come in. It's kind of like a phoenix rising from the ashes type of thing. And, the way that I think that it works is we can't just all of a sudden come out with, med beds, or create a new monetary system, or come out with anti-gravity ships. It has to be a slow rollout and a demolition of the old way, a subtle kind of change, an easy phase out, unless you're wanting to really shock the system, but then that kind of creates too much opposition.
I will go 180 degrees with you on that one, respectfully. I think that mindset is what keeps us where we're at. I think we are actually that adaptable, and as a species that isn't divided. When we are in unison, we can take anything. We'll absorb it. The shockwave will go right through us as long as we're together. I think that's a very critical thing. You could tell humanity anything, and we'll take it in stride. Just tell us the truth. Tell us immediately. Give us the hardcore truth, and we'll actually take it in stride every time. That's what we do. Convincing people of the opposite is the problem. We're so prepared.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I'm all for shocking the system.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying you're from the other direction.
No. I was just trying to look at it from their perspective, right? And I mean, I'm for just putting it all out there, right? I think that we can handle it, right? But because we've been under this control system for far too freaking long, just open the gates, let us go, let us be free, right? I'm just trying to speak from their side, right? If you think about it, what if one day everyone just woke up and their money is just completely worthless, right? You couldn't buy anything with it. Well, that would be a freaking disaster and chaos in the street, straight up uprising. People would freak the F out. So they have to kind of drag it out and basically, kind of make us beg for it, because the easiest way to make someone do something that they don't necessarily want to do is to make them think it's their idea, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. That's
By
that Hegelian
creating,
dialectic,
yeah,
problem, reaction, solution.
exactly, and by creating the right conditions for it,
Mhm.
they've been using this problem reaction solution thing that you just mentioned for decades now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about how inverted and how turned upside down, really everything is in our reality. It becomes way more difficult to, navigate and get through, to find out, real truth, because the media and all that, like I said earlier, is just projecting an illusionary reality to get us on, either all the way in our right brain or all the way in our left brain. They don't want a marrying of the two systems, because then we break out of the control.
Keeping in all the vaguest sense of the terms to not mess up the airwaves, people will be asking for a solution all too soon enough for a problem that didn't exist 2 years ago. And the reaction we're witnessing right now, and the solution will be offered, and they'll clamor for it by design.
Yeah, because they've created a boogeyman.
Mm-hmm. And they just keep doing it over and over again. It's just that's the new design. I mean, that's what we've been seeing. If you just simply use the term boogeyman in the media, I mean, a boogeyman by any definition is all you see being just retitled through every aspect of the news for the last 40 years. The guns in school boogeyman, global warming boogeyman. It's just all different boogeyman.
Yeah,
I mean, thank God that everything that happened in the last year just seemed to have, made all the schools peaceful again.
well, I mean, on some levels, but I would hate to be a child right now.
Oh, I get it. I get it. I'm just being a wiseacre that, all of our other woes seem to disappear the split second we have a new boogeyman. All the old boogeymen go right away. They don't matter anymore whatsoever.
Or they lump all of the old boogeyman into a new boogeyman.
Yeah. I think that's where we're headed very, very shortly. I have high hopes for the future, is my best intentions. But I've been giving people ample warning. We're not winning this fight. Like we started earlier in the conversation saying there's different factions and there's fights going on. I very much represent the people of the earth. It's just that simple. They're in big trouble and no one's really sticking up for them, and they don't even know it. And that's the faction that I want to see not have their blinders on anymore, not be so used and abused. And then just the average Joe Blow, because the average Joe Blow is just getting used and abused by like the groups that you mentioned. There are elitists and there are folks on this planet that are operating from, I wouldn't even say privileged positions, because they're underneath someone else. They're relative. So they might have different resources and logistics lines available to them than the average Joe. But that's just mismanagement on this planet. There's no lack of resources at all. There's ample resources for everyone here. And to try to convince people of otherwise just puts you on the wrong side. It's self-evident. I'm on the side of the people and the planet, and I say there's enough for everybody, and everybody should be able to stay because there's plenty enough for everyone. And if you disagree with that, if you're on the other side, if you say that's not true, there's limited blah, 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 guess whose side you're on? Not the people's. You're buying the party line, and you're on the other side. Sorry, that's the way it is right now. That's the state of the earth. Yeah, there's plenty for everyone. Everyone deserves to be here. We're all in this together. We're all on the same side. Anything else is division.
Exactly. I mean, if we took the entire population of the entire world, we could literally fit everyone where you're at. We could fit everyone in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
right? And they could
Yep.
be a mile apart from each other and have land and have, everything. The whole overpopulation thing is a myth. It's a
Yep.
lie.
The lack of resources is a myth and a lie. There's no lack of food. There's tons of food. There's more areas on this planet to grow food than we could ever possibly imagine. We've yet to even to begin to take care of the land agriculturally, just for the express benefit of seeing how much food we could theoretically produce if that was the only task we wanted to get to. So with that being said, there is more food that could be created for hungry mouths than we could ever begin to imagine to put labor towards. There's no lack of food. There's tons of it. There's just mismanagement. So don't tell me there's no food. Tell me who the bad people are that enjoy mismanaging the food.
I agree with you. 100%. I think that if a lot of people would just realize that and realize that we've been played and lied to about all kinds of different things, and just kind of, think outside of the box and have critical thinking and common sense, because I think that's really what's lacking right now. It's just a lot of critical thinking and common sense has just gone out the window, because everyone's so engulfed in fear, and fear makes it to where the dark side, whatever you want to call them, the archons, you can call them whatever, they could be physical, they could be non-physical, whatever. That gives them the opportunity to create things that would otherwise not been able to be implemented. During a crisis, they can get away with things that under normal circumstances would not be able to be gotten away with.
Yep. Absolutely. They very much take advantage of things like that with great regularity. They don't even have to wait for massive crises. An interesting thing people can do is just look every year, look at the legislation that they pass every year on Christmas Eve, just because everybody just so happens to be slightly preoccupied that day. Go figure that someone would know that and take advantage of it. But every year, it happens every year. The most god-awful stuff gets passed through on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, and then I try to explain to people, because we've had two really big events, in just my lifetime. One of those was, 9/11, which was a collective traumatization, just like what's happening now. And I try to explain to people, I'm like, listen, whenever these laws and policies get implemented, they don't hardly ever get rolled back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're still living out everything that we lived out from 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still under the Patriot Act, that hasn't gone anywhere. We still have to take our shoes off before we get on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
We're still living out all of these different policies and laws from that event. So what makes you think that they're going to roll back any of these, freedoms and things that they've taken away from us on this event?
It's Newton's laws of motion as far as I'm concerned on stuff like that. You can see the momentum and the direction that they're going. So if you can't show me the equal and opposite force going against that momentum, then I can give you a solid prediction as to where we're headed. And it's just the momentum is we're going towards more loss of freedoms and people becoming ignorant to what their freedoms should be. You could read them the Constitution and they don't even interpret it the way that they're supposed to, and they don't even know that anymore.
Because they've kind of normalized this illusionary reality that's been projected upon the public. I think that's the biggest biggest part of it, and one of the biggest keys that they use is normalization.
Yes. Right? Yep. Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah. That's through repetition.
Mm.
That's what the digital medias are that we have, so I'm going to try to break through those walls and be repetitious with a different message that's going against theirs, 100%. But pretty much the same technique because it works.
Yeah. So that being said, what kind of solutions could you kind of recommend for people? Because I try and bring that out in a lot of my shows too, is to give people practical solutions that they can kind of follow to expand their reality and, question things that's going on. So what are some steps or some recommendations maybe that you have done personally that could help some people as they're watching this video?
I'm practicing unity, and I recommend everybody practices unity. I'm deciphering my experience, and what I do with that is that I'm basically embracing, I call it like an 80-20. Like 80% of our lives are pretty much similar. Like the boring 80% of my life is very similar to the boring 80% of your life. You know, you wake up, you have a job, you have a car, you pay your insurance, you have rent, like that type of stuff. You know, we all share that same story, but it's our 20% that makes us different, that we don't share with people because it's expressly ours, and lots of times it's so different, we hold it in, we don't connect with people because of that. And I want to make people more comfortable in expressing that 20% as well, so that they embrace themselves as a whole and they express their stories in their entirety for the benefit of themselves and everyone around them, right? I believe that your story, Ryder, is important, that your experience matters. And even if you have oddball parts of you that you don't normally communicate, I believe without a doubt that if you were to communicate it, I could learn something from it. So to me, it's a detriment to the world for all of us to collectively be withholding our 20% because it's a little bit uncomfortable for us, when in reality, everyone has a 20%. We should all just embrace it and share it for the benefit of ourselves. And I think the they in the equation likes us to only consider that the 80% is real. And they don't want us to discuss the 20% because it's hard to discuss the 20%. I get that. But that's what makes you, you, and that's what makes me, me. And in reality, if we were to choose which aspects of us would be the more engaging part to discuss, I think you would agree that if we were to sit down and have a coffee or something, we'd rather just discuss our 20% and leave the 80s out of it. And I think people should start doing that more. I think connecting with people is very important, especially on that level. More so than ever, I think, is critical right now for us to let people know, I'm as weird as you are. It's all good. We're all in this together. We can help each other.
I agree with you so much. And I think a lot of that comes down to us just being authentic, right? Us being authentic to not only everyone in our life, but authentic to ourselves.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then that'll help us align with the direction that we want to go in our life. I think that a lot of the unhappiness of living in this reality comes from our soul and our purpose not being aligned with what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's important for us to get out the most authentic version of ourselves and be that all the time, because we don't serve anybody. We don't serve ourselves. We don't serve anybody by not being honest, with not being authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that authenticity, I think, would also happen in a lot of that 20% that people withhold would also be our lesser moments. But those are also some of our best teaching moments that we would have to share with someone else. And as a society, we should be sharing that so that we as a species, as a group that's working together, grows faster. I mean, ultimately, it's good for us as individuals, but it helps us to move forwards collectively to a higher frequency without the assistance of all these hot-rodded components that people want to stick in us now to make it happen. We can do this ourselves. We can increase our frequency, our spirituality, whatever you want to call it. We can grow, and we can do it through intermingling with ourselves and our consciousnesses and our energies. And I find it maddening, the obvious intentions nowadays to divide us. And it's really agitating me. I'm trying to get people to get back face to face together. And I mean, there's some forces on the planet working against me on that one. I believe in hanging out with people together and learning from them.
Yeah, and not being so, one-sided, and expanding your beliefs, in turn expanding our consciousness. That's what it really comes down to for me anyway, is that we need to be able to bend with the wind, right?
Mhm.
And flow like the water, just like Bruce Lee says, flow like water. I don't think that's his exact quote, but it's something like that.
It's close
Um,
enough.
yeah. But be open to the possibility of changing your beliefs when new information is presented to you.
Mhm.
You know, don't just get so stuck in one version. You know, there's multiple angles, there's multiple things happening all at one time. It doesn't just have to be this way, it just doesn't have to be that way. That's the goal of the dark side, is to make you think that it's all black or it's all white, you know when there's a bunch of gray area
Mhm.
in there, and the gray area is where the real stuff actually exists.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm very interested in other people's stories and the paths that they've walked, um, and the whys and wherefores. When I had my plumbing company in New York, and I would go to all these different people's homes, there's a lot of questions that you just engage people with that are kind of standard pleasantries. But then some folks, you realize you can get a little bit more intimate with the conversation, and more driving with the questions. And I learned a lot of really cool stuff. But one of the things that I would always ask people um, was simply like, whatever it was that they did for a living, right? I said, I get that it pays the bills and all that kind of stuff, and blah, blah, blah. I said, but seriously, you know, does it make you happy? And would you be doing this if you could be doing something else and still paying your bills? Like if you could just flip a switch and be doing something else. And almost everybody would have flipped that switch. Almost nobody's happy with what they're doing in life. And that amazes me, because no one admits it to everyone else. But how is it that we're all in this circle? Everyone's doing this. No one's happy, but no one's going to admit it to anyone. What are we doing? Oh, but I'm paying my bills. But it doesn't make you happy. It's just the weirdest thing. So I've seen this weird section of life where I kind of know a lot of truth about people, and it's like a freaking ant colony. Everybody just does their job and grins and bears it and hushes up about the stuff that they don't think other people should really talk about.
Yeah, I had a thought the other day about how we've been entrained and indoctrinated just by going to a 9 to 5 job. We've kind of been trained like robots.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some people that they just go to their job and it's just their job. They don't think of anything outside of that. They're just there to make money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really care what people say to them. They don't care what's going on. They're just there to do their job, and they get their things and they go home. It's literally like they're a robot following the crowd and just following with everyone else. And then what else is that programming onto them in their everyday life when they're not working?
Yeah, and you're right. They don't know. They're programmed. You're right. It's so programmed, because I've worked way outside of this program and had to communicate to people differently. Okay. I did for a while what they call rotational work here in Alaska. And it's 3 weeks on, 3 weeks on, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, threes and fours. You get rotations, right? But when I go to work, I fly somewhere, I go to a camp, and I will work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day is a minimum, lots of times, sometimes more. And I can do that for 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks straight. But then you get time off. You rotate. Okay. So in the weeks that you're working a lot of overtime. So for all practical purposes, let's say you do a 3 and 3 for the year. In 1 year's time, you're going to make more than a year's salary because of all the overtime. And you're going to have half the year off. Now explain to me why you would then choose to work a full year if you could work rotationally. But people don't know they can work rotationally. And when you start to explain to them this process, the cognitive dissonance that has them reaching for that 9 to 5 schedule blows my mind. Because you're like, no, 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 you're right. You're right. You should work the whole year for less money. Good call.
Yeah, that's I was kind of that's kind of like what being on like a a towboat, working on the river, working on a towboat is. You got a week on, a week off. Some people have 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and it
Yes.
gets them on a different kind of schedule.
And people just can't even imagine that exists. They can't find a comfort zone without that security of knowing I have a job next week from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Good. My mortgage will be paid. I can afford Twinkies and Doritos again.
Yeah, that's it's interesting when we bring those kinds of things up, because it's like, how much of our everyday lives is just constant programming, like our technology, like, our phones are programming us to constantly look down. Like whenever you go to the store, you go to the market, how many people do you actually see with their head up, actually confident?
Right.
Very few people,
Yep.
right? And that's because of this. That's
Mhm.
because of your phone constantly wanting to look down, and people don't even realize that they're being programmed by certain things like that. They think that it's just normal because, again, they've just normalized it.
What do you think about? I've tried to postulate this idea before, but what do you think? Like, so they say like there's like in video games that there's just like there's certain roles, like there's only a certain amount of characters, right? So I feel like in life around us that because of the programming, that people have a tendency to fall into roles, and that in our society, I would say that we could, if we were to sit down and consider, we would be able to come up with, I believe, a short list of roles that we would find that anyone you meet would fit into one of these. And that there aren't that many. There'd be, blue collar guy, white collar office worker, but there wouldn't be that many roles, but we would start to be able to categorize folks, and it happens. And I know people go, well, it's stereotyping, but in a way, that's exactly what I'm getting at, is that people are choosing to stereotype themselves by choosing to jump into these roles that are pre-programmed and waiting for them. So it just becomes comfortable. Yeah. Well, I would actually say, I believe it's actually societally placed. I wouldn't even want to say imposed. They just make it so convenient for people's consciousnesses to jump into one of these roles because society promotes its existence. And you'd be going against society's rules to break out of these roles.
And then you have people heckling you. Then you have people telling you that you're not good enough, that you can't do this thing that you want to do to try and break out of this normal role, this normal societal role that your family has done. You know what I mean? That is a generational thing. It's kind of like being working in the coal mines. Like if you work in the coal mines, it means that your entire family before you has worked in the coal mines. It means your dad worked in the coal mines. It means his dad worked in the coal mines. So it's like it's a generational kind of programming too, I think. And then not only a societal programming, but it goes back farther than that too.
How about here's a role in society that's programmed in that we see all over the place, right? Big sports fan guy has the jersey, the hat, come on, really? We're really all supposed to care that much about sports? I mean, I've been not watching Monday Night Football since it was, before it became cool to not watch Monday Night Football, just because it's programming, We don't need all the sporting jerseys, folks. It's not really supporting your team. It's just supporting some rich dude. You look like a sheep.
Yeah, I've never been a sports fan because I've just always seen it as that, as a programming, just like like you said, and I don't care to watch football or basketball or any kind of sport.
I always thought it was funny when people were like, yeah, did you see the game last night? We won. I'm like, oh, how many touchdowns did you get? Oh, you didn't get any? What is this we part?
but they've taken on that as an identity.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a hardcore role that we can see in society is avid sports fan. That's we can put that one on the list. We found one role that a lot of people jump right into because it's very comfortable and society supports it. You can be avid sports fan all day long and you fit in.
Yeah. And you're never questioned,
Nope. Everybody knows what you're up to. Everything you're doing is approved. It gets a stamp. You know where the guy's going to be Monday night, Super Bowl Sunday, doing everything you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I see it as a big distraction too, because it's kind of like a cooler talk at work, water cooler talk or a break room talk, it's kind of like a distraction for something that it seems like everyone can be an all-encompassing thing, that if you mention the game last night, then 9 times out of 10 someone's going to relate to that, and you can talk about it, and you don't have to talk about the 20% of things that you were talking about, the real hardcore stuff that actually matters.
I look at everything as a distraction because that's the goal. This is the long and short of what I learned as a kid in the CIA remote viewing program is that our power is our thought. That's everything. And anything that they can do by every design to simply distract humans from sitting around and using their consciousnesses together. That's the game. That's the faction. We are very strong and very adaptable, and it has more to do with our energetic physique than our physical presentation. And there are folks that are very aware of what we can do mentally. So therefore is the distraction. So they can get you from 9 to 5. They got you right there. They got you for that first 40 hours, no problemo. And they can usually get you on the cheap. And usually they can get almost everybody to work for just about as much money it takes for them to spend. They have this pretty well dialed in. If you think that you're going out and you're looking for wages, you're not. Look at it from the other perspective. They get almost every single person to generate just enough money that they need to spend almost all of it again and put it right back to the handler.
It's an ingenious...
great little plan. That's the first 40 hours. Now, after that 40 hours, they just need how to figure out to dangle the things in front of you that you're going to give them their money back on. The world's a company store, folks. Miners from back in the day would see this very clearly. We're just borrowing stuff already. And that Monday night football time they can get back. And then if you have kids, well, you're going to have to take your kids to football practice because they need to be indoctrinated too. So that'll be every day after school. That'll take some time. They got games on Saturdays, maybe Sundays if it's a good team. Maybe traveling team. You can put some money into that. But whatever we got to do, they don't want us thinking.
Yeah, that you really hit the nail on the head there.
They'll let this do the thinking for you now. How many times do you go and you how many times when you're talking to someone and you ask them a question, do you catch them in the middle of thought or typing? I find that amazing. I ask them a question now. They don't think, they type. And it's like, I was hoping you were a thinker.
Yeah, and then we also have Google now that tells us how to think. Any question you have, you just type it right into Google, and then they give you the answer. There's no thinking anymore. People don't think at all. That's where the common sense and critical thinking, when I was talking about earlier, is just gone.
And there's the baby steps too. Like you said, like in a way you just said, like Google tells us what to think, and you're so right, because I remember back when you used to Google stuff and it would give you good info. Like I don't know how far away it is between, like, I don't know, but eventually I feel like someday I'm going to Google, like, hey Google, what's 2 + 2? And it's going to be like, could be 5, could be 6. Like, how much money you got? Do you really want to know? There's a way to find out what 2 + 2 is, but if you're going to try Googling that stuff, we're not going to just tell you the answer. And there's going to be a whole bunch of fluff in here that you can try to divine out if it's true or not, what the answer is, but good luck. And the internet didn't used to be like that, but people nowadays don't know.
Yeah, it's incredible the way that they've set that up. You know, like I was talking about earlier, it's not just one thing is happening for one reason.
Mhm.
It's a multi-layered, branching off, and then there's branches to that branch, and then it just keeps on going. It's like a blooming onion that you get from the fair. Like you
Mhm.
peel back one layer, and then there's another layer appears.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like an unending one. It's like yeah, it's like a toroid somehow. You can just keep going inward and peeling out. And this is, but you know what? This actually makes sense in our reality, because this is where folks need to start studying things like fractal math and fractal geometry, and that these things matter. But that's not what they're teaching in schools. Reality is a lot more complex, a lot more complex than we've been taught. Another misconception, there's a term, Occam's razor, that gets thrown around quite regularly, and is a good debate as to whether it's being used correctly or not. But there's an idea behind it that, people state that, oh, well, if you're trying to figure something out, well, Occam's razor says that, just the simplest thing is usually true. And that is, in a way, how Occam's razor is applied. But it doesn't mean it's right. That's what people do. But in reality, that's not true in the slightest. People want that to be true. Just because you can come up with a simple answer, life almost never turns out to be that simple. That's just a human creature comfort zone. And the idea of Occam's razor was actually to take all of the things that could be considered, and then to slice by slice, remove all things that cannot be possible. And then whatever remains would have to be plausible. That's what Occam's razor is really getting at, the slicing and the razoring away. But it is literally through the tedious consideration of every possibility, not through simplicity's sake. It's through crazy complexity of study and testing every possibility to then get to what would be what's left. But most people are not going to get any semblance of consideration of all that's possible nowadays, because they're given information in the programming that tells them what's possible, that presents what's possible, and they believe it. It's frustrating. I've just seen too much of the world. I've met too many people. I've had too many great conversations. I've been in too many cool buildings, and the world is way more complex than any factions are telling we the people.
Yeah, and like you were talking about with that Occam's razor thing, what gives them the to what form of reality are they working under that these possibilities won't work? Like what kind of system are they working under that they can just shut off a specific possibility as not being plausible, right? Because we know that we're living in an ever changing and ever evolving reality where possibilities are completely endless.
Yes. So yes, it's a great question. At what point do you get to say something isn't possible? Right. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think all too often people are slicing off things from consideration when they are absolutely still very considerable. How many people are not open to the idea that there's been life coming and going on this planet is forever? A lot of people can't handle that conversation, aren't open to the conversation, and will be belligerent if you try to communicate anything of the such to them.
Or they think it's a threat, or they think it's demons,
All possible.
Gonna...
I couldn't negate the possibilities from their perspective. And lots of times I'm just looking for reciprocity from people. I consider myself relatively tolerant until people are intolerant. I'm a big fan of people having opinions, passionate opinions, and sharing them. But you can't get, I guess, just angry when other people are as passionate about their opinions.
Yeah, because we live in a reality of perspective, right? And my perspective is different than yours because you've had different experiences than me. Your experiences cultivate and create your reality, which then cultivate and create your truth. Right? My truth is different than yours, but that doesn't mean that my truth is any less valid than your truth.
Right. And it doesn't mean that by any semblance of reality that we have no idea who walks up to converse and who's going to walk away with more until after. I mean, you can't presume who's the bigger experience. It doesn't work like that. It's just experience. People like to think if you walk up to a homeless person on the street, like you're going to teach them something. How do you know the homeless person isn't about to teach you something? People get very proud of their experiences and preachy, but it's like, well, other people have theirs as well. I totally get that. That's why I'm saying everybody needs to share their experiences more. I think we've been taught to disrespect the experiences of others with great ease nowadays if it's different than ours, under the banner of people screaming tolerance and being homogenous, be like us. It's the craziest thing that I'm seeing nowadays.
Yeah, it's really a screwing with your mind. It's a psychological warfare, right? Where they're doing one thing but telling you that it's another thing.
That in and of itself is mentally traumatizing, and part of the program is to keep giving people mixed signals like that. Absolutely part of MK Ultra programming. This is like stuff that I would talk to with Penny. I'd say, they're not targeting us anymore. They're targeting everyone else. They're just using the programs that they learned how to be this manipulative on folks like me and Penny when we were kids. So they messed with us to learn how to do what worked. And now we're just basically coming out of the woodwork and going, guys, watch your back. They're shooting at you now.
Yeah, they turn the individual type of MK Ultra Project Pegasus programming into a collective programming, because they had to know that it worked on an individual basis to basically take it worldwide and put it on a collective type of trauma. Because we know that the trauma-based mind control is, there for a reason to mind fracture, people to get them into subset personalities, right? So they've taken that research, which I'm sure that they still do it. I'm not 100% sure. I guarantee they're still doing it on some level, on an individual basis. But they've really expanded their efforts and turned it into a collective MK Ultra traumatization, type of mind control.
Oh yeah. The documentation that I've been collecting just keeps accruing. When I keep thinking that I'm going to lose the scent and that might be gone, I find more info. So again, like I was stating earlier, with momentum and Newton's laws, I expect I'm going to keep finding more info, and the trail will continue and the years will accrue that these programs have been continuing. They just keep changing names. I mean, that's how these systems work and how these programs function. They know how to lose the scent. Politicians change hands. Companies keep getting checks. The companies will keep doing what they're doing, and the politicians will rotate out, and the companies will keep doing what they need to do. That's what people don't realize. The politicians aren't running everything. The companies are. Companies maintain. The companies have lobby groups. The companies are funding the elections. I mean, come on. That's how politics work. If we got rid of if we got rid of parties, I should say, entirely, if we got rid of parties entirely, and commercial lobby groups funding politicians, we get rid of most of our problems in the country. But like you said, they're not going to roll this stuff back. We already have it. They're not rolling that back. Oh, we're going to give back the billions of dollars that corporations give us as politicians. Let's vote on that one right now. Who wants to do that? We don't need their billions. We'll just go to meet every person now because we don't even have parties either. But that would fix stuff.
Yeah, it really would. I think even like getting rid of the two-party system and stating some kind of committee, as
that's if you just get rid of the parties, that's what we have. Legislators, senators, those are the committees. We have the committees. We just need to get rid of the outside affiliations. The committees are supposed to be the people they represent. It's supposed to start with the people, and then locally a committee gets together and goes, this is our representative. And then a bunch of those representatives get together and they make a committee, and eventually people keep moving upward and onward. But it just starts locally and goes as far as it has to, but funded in a normal fashion, not by corporations that are predetermining through funding.
And bought off people and corrupt individuals.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just we're at a point right now where the people are basically bought and sold, and they're not aware of it. And they have the shiny things because they think they have a choice in the matter. But that's not freedom. I mean, what would you say your definition of freedom is, Ryder?
I would say that my definition of freedom would be, well, freedom for me or freedom collectively. Like
for you,
freedom.
for your personal definition of just freedom. Freedom from Ryder's perspective is fill in the blank.
Would be that I would not need to have a monetary system, get rid of the monetary system. I believe that that's enslaved a lot of us, and they're just creating debt by taking our money, right? They build the money, and then they charge interest on the debt that they've accumulated.
So the instrument of your enslavement, you would say, is very much monetary.
I would believe so, because I think if we got rid of that system, then that would free a lot of us.
Here's a way that we can give an example of those shackles on you. Okay. If you had woken up today and instead of doing this wonderful conversation, if instead you were to just go do the things that you want to do, right? That you choose to do, or anything that you want to do, as if money was no object. Okay. Imagine the things that you would do then. But now add the fact that money is an object. How far would you actually get along on that list?
Well, honestly, I'm doing exactly what I would be doing if I had, all the money in the world. I would still be having this conversation right here, right now with you, because I believe that what we're doing is very important to, to everyone.
Excellent.
Not only me, not only, you, but just as a collective. And it helps me, so much too, to express myself and to get things off of my chest instead of holding them up and bottling them up, inside of me. And then that just drives you crazy, to have a solid and good outlet, right? We all need an outlet in our life, whether that's someone that you can talk to, or some way that you can talk to, but a positive kind of, outlet to get these things off of our mind, because a lot of times our mind is our own worst enemy. Our mind can basically, drive us crazy.
I think there is something now that I'm witnessing my experience for the last year and what I'm seeing, I'm going to believe that there is something in the human exchange of having a face-to-face interaction and just simply communicating that is beneficial to both parties. I believe that a lot more so than ever. And I also feel like I'm seeing folks that are trying to prevent that. So I see intentions. So it gives me pause. I almost never would have thought that if I hadn't seen so much intention being applied to prevent it. It really makes me look at the circumstance directly, and that's my current assessment. And I promote people speaking to each other in person, face to face. I think it is healthy for them.
Yeah, we've been kind of entrenched in this virtual reality world. I mean, we're using this to our benefit right now by speaking to each other and letting other people listen to what we're talking about. But the real magic is like you said, face to face. That's when our energies can combine and they can hold, and we can do all this. But we're basically using the negative tech and the toxic technology that's been given to us to our advantage.
Yes, absolutely. I get that. I'm not trying to discount this at all. I do look at it that way. Is what you and I are doing here is we're using the tech instead of the tech using us. That's the way I see it. So I'm going to be taking advantage of the digital social structures and getting more involved to spread my experience further and try to connect with other folks that they themselves might have had a peculiar past and are looking to engage others and spread their truth. I started a website. It's up and running technically, and I'll be able to be streaming from there live. And I'm going to be inviting other people onto that platform as well, because I want to provide a safe haven for people to actually express themselves and not have to worry about the gatekeepers of information banning them and squishing them and not being able to get their voice out. So this is what I'm doing, is just trying to be that change and just, I don't know, like almost, I guess, break ground a little bit. And the way I look at it is like you break ground a little bit and then you make it's easier for the next person, you know. They'll follow up behind you. I did, trade work most of my life. And we would say things like, your finished work is only as good as your rough construction. But someone's got to get in there and break ground still. Someone's got to go in there, before you set a faucet in a house, somebody's got to go in and break ground and put a foundation in and just get in there. So that's the way I look at it with this truth stuff, is that I'm just trying to break ground in an environment where everybody's getting squished, and hopefully get them to get their voices out, because there's such a push to silence everybody right now and muzzle them figuratively.
Yeah, that was really the goal with my channel too, was to kind of bring on everyday kind of people to come on and chat, because a lot of times if you bring on the big names and the people, they're just feeding you regurgitated stuff that they've kind of told other people, so it's kind of more difficult to get in there and dissect a lot of their things unless you've really kind of worked on them before and exactly what you're going to say. But I have one last question before I let you go here. We're getting around an hour and a half here, and it takes a while to upload whenever I get past the an hour actually. But
Totally understood. It's a pain in the neck.
it is, sometimes it takes forever. But my last question here is which is a perfect lead into what you were just talking about. We know a lot of these communities have kind of, been infiltrated by certain individuals to basically put out disinformation or, in order to discredit specific people. Every community kind of has these kinds of, agents doing this, exaggerating and dramatizing certain things, turning it into something so unbelievable that when the real thing actually comes out, people don't believe it. Classic CIA psychological warfare. But my question is, have you experienced anything like this in the past year with you coming out with your experiences, of course, without naming any names?
Define the like this part when you say experienced anything like this.
I mean, have you experienced any kind of people with disinformation or misinformation kind of like infiltrate into your field, like into your group of people?
Yes, I have. How do I put this? I have major trust issues. I mean, it just is what it is. I've had a rough life. So I, like everybody else, when they see stuff presented as information, and I verify things before I just trust things. So there's certain people that their stories ring true to me. There's certain people who, I don't trust them. It just is what it is. They have no proof and they're telling a story. Is it true? I don't know. They don't have proof. They're speaking their experience. But then I know there's more folks like me. I've been to the South Pole. I have pictures and video. I know there's more people like me, so I would like for them to reach out. I do like that idea. But going back to like the infiltrators, I guess you would say, it's like I've been reached out to by folks that I have just straight up told them, I'm like, the person you represent, I don't trust them. I'm not looking to pick a fight. I'm not looking to cause trouble. But that's what you're going to get if you put me on stage with this person. I mean, that's what's going to happen. I'm like, I've been to these places. I have pictures and video. You're going to put me on stage with a person that I'm telling you I don't trust them, and you want me to engage them. You think I'm not going to crush them? And I mean, it just is what it is. So that was kind of my brushing with these folks, is that I basically said, listen, I've been there. I know I've been there. I can prove I've been there. You're going to cause problems for your person. And then you're going to get mad at me, and you guys like lashing out at people. So I'm not looking to get lashed out by people, but it is what it is. I've been to the places that I've been. I have pictures and video. I have experiences that I can back up. I wish other people could be operating from the same place. It would make life a lot easier. I don't want to throw stones at people, but there's certain stories that I certainly don't believe everything I'm told. I'm open to listening, but I can't corroborate any experiences other than my own. And that is what gets probed, I guess. People want me to say stuff that corroborates other people's stuff, but I can't do that. I can only speak from my experiences. If somebody else's stuff matches to mine, we can talk about that. But that, I mean, I don't know. It was a very weird conversation. It's happened a few times, and it was like as if folks were trying to get me dialed in or something.
Like an initiation almost.
Yeah, it was hard because it was I don't like I shouldn't say I don't like. I'm very comfortable speaking with people face to face. It is my preference. I have a very solid read on people, and I have trust issues. So when I'm getting a spiel from someone over the phone and it sounds like a spiel, I pretty much call them out on it, and hence you haven't seen me on any major shows.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. I had a great conversation with you, and I would love to, have you back on in the future. I'm sure we can.
Awesome, Ryder. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to be paying more attention to your channel as well. So maybe I'll have you over on at DecipheringMyExperience sometime, and you can share your 20%.
Awesome. I would love to. Love to do that. If anyone's trying to contact you, what would be the best way that they could contact you or follow your channel?
The best way to follow along right now would be the brand new website. You can just simply go to deciphering.tv, and that'll have everything that you need to know about me. I have Deciphering My Experience on YouTube, but that's about it. I'm going to be transitioning to the website fast and furiously, and using that as my platform in the not too distant future, and trying to draw other great content creators over there so that we can get some truth again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All of the links to Eric's info will be in the description, so be sure to check those out and follow along with his experiences. And thank you again, Eric. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ryder.
And thanks everyone else for listening, and please be sure to hit that thumbs up button, share and subscribe. And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep loving your heart for everyone, and stay safe out there. See you guys next week.